Court has ruled against the Trump administration's efforts to slash foreign aid spending. In a 5-4 emergency ruling today, justices denied the administration's request to cancel $2 billion in aid money. The decision keeps a lower court ruling in place ordering that foreign aid agreements must be paid. The underlying lawsuit was brought by nonprofits and businesses who say they were not paid for foreign aid work done for the U.S. government. Joining me now is the Hill's Courts and Legal reporter, Zach Schonfeld. Zach, this ruling is a loss for the Trump administration. So how soon will it have to release the nearly $2 billion in foreign aid?
Hey, Drew, this could happen very quickly. The next step in this case is it will return back to a lower court, to the trial court where the Biden-appointed federal judge had issued a ruling ordering the Trump administration to pretty quickly release this roughly $2 billion worth of payments. So now the judge has ordered the parties to propose a schedule to him in writing by tomorrow morning. He will then hold a hearing later in the day, and then we expect to get some answers. So we don't know the exact timing quite yet, but this Supreme Court ruling really does pave the way for the judge to start enforcing his ruling, and we could see that exact timing and schedule come into play as soon as tomorrow.
And conservative justices John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett joined the three liberal justices in that 5-4 vote. But they say the lower court judge should clarify exactly what obligations the government must fulfill. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, that's now, like I said, returning to the lower court here to determine exactly what the new schedule should be now that the deadline that he originally set, last week's Wednesday at midnight deadline, has come and gone. But as you mentioned there, this was a really interesting breakdown on the court with the Chief Justice and Justice Barrett, one of Donald Trump's own appointees to the court, siding with their liberal counterparts to form this majority by the slimmest of margins, this 5-4 vote. But what was also striking is not what we heard from the majority, but also what we heard from the four conservative justices who were in dissent. There was a dissent authored by Justice Samuel Alito. He was joined by his colleagues Justice Clarence Thomas, Justice Neil Gorsuch, and Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Alito wrote that he was stunned by the court's ruling, saying that it gives this lower judge in Washington, D.C. unchecked power. One other thing I'll just note is I also think the timing of this ruling was interesting. This came down this morning, just about 12 hours after some of the justices had come face to face with Trump during his joint address to Congress. Trump, as he was walking up to start his speech, was thanking the justices, telling some of them they were doing a great job. But little did the president know that the Chief Justice and Justice Barrett at that point were preparing to rule against him this morning.
All right, at the rate that these decisions are coming down, don't go too far. We're going to need you again soon. Zach Schonfeld, thanks so much.
Thanks, Drew.
These people sitting right here will not clap, will not stand, and certainly will not cheer for these astronomical achievements. They won't do it, no matter what. Five times I've been up here. It's very sad, and it just shouldn't be this way.
In front of a joint session of Congress last night, President Trump addressed the nation. He attacked Democrats, boasted of his accomplishments so far, and made a laundry list of promises to the American people. Joining us to talk about all the key moments and what it means, not just here in Washington, but far beyond, Niall Stanage, White House columnist here at The Hill. Presidents in the past have used these joint session speeches to not only drive their message, but also there's often been a lot of bipartisan moments. This was not that. A lot of culture war stuff. Trump attacked former President Biden, Elizabeth Warren. Democrats mostly sat on their hands. They were criticized for not standing for this 13-year-old cancer survivor. You've seen a lot of these. What did you make of last night?
I think it reflected the degree to which it's an extremely polarized nation right now, and it also reflected President Trump's broader approach, which is to go full bore toward pleasing his base. You mentioned the culture war issues that he expended a lot of time on. He is, I think, much more interested in ginning up that enthusiasm among the people who elected him, rather than making particularly ostentatious notes of bipartisanship.
Trump spoke about some of the issues we've been following really closely. One of them, the war in Ukraine. He read parts of what he said was a letter from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Sounded a lot like a tweet that was put out earlier in the day. Also said that he's had serious discussion with the Russians. Let's take a listen.
It's time to stop this madness. It's time to halt the killing. It's time to end this senseless war.
Trump continues to kind of both sides of this thing, despite it being Russia that invaded its sovereign neighbor. What do you make of what he said about Ukraine in that speech last night?
I think there was a slight softening of tone toward Vladimir Zelensky. There certainly weren't the kind of attacks on Zelensky that we've heard from Trump in the recent past. Having said that, as that clip kind of indicated, there's a lot of vagueness around exactly how Trump sees this war ending. Does he believe that Vladimir Putin has to make any concessions? If so, what are they? We know literally nothing about that side of the equation.
Elon Musk, another big theme of Trump's first month and a half back in office. He was actually in attendance last night. Let's watch.
I have created the brand new Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, perhaps you've heard of it, which is headed by Elon Musk, who is in the gallery tonight.
So Musk got a standing ovation from Republicans last night. When it comes to Musk, it seems like a lot of Republicans feel like they have a wolf by the ears. You're not happy where you're at, but you don't want to let go.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it in a lot of ways. I think that there is some skepticism about Elon Musk among some Republicans, certainly when they're talking off the record or they're not on camera. And that is partly because he's such a sort of volatile figure himself. It's also because his approval ratings are lower than Trump's. He is a more divisive figure. And I think there is concern about the fact that he is, in effect, an unaccountable figure. We saw President Trump in his speech complain about the unaccountable bureaucracy. You may not describe Elon Musk as a bureaucrat, but he's not accountable to anyone who is elected.
It was interesting. Right after he said that thing about unaccountable bureaucrats, pan right to Elon Musk. Trump also made a lot of promises to the American people, continuing on some of the themes he made on the campaign trail. Let's take a listen to that.
We're seeking permanent income tax cuts all across the board. I'm calling for no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security benefits for our great seniors. And I also want to make interest payments on car loans tax deductible, but only if the car is made in America.
You get a car, you get a car, you get a car. Actually, literally. A lot of promises there. Can Trump deliver on all those?
Well, possibly. I mean, it is possible to deliver on those things, but not if you want to keep the fiscally conservative members of the Republican Party on board, because all of those things cost money, quite a significant amount of money in a lot of cases. And so making these promises, fiscal conservatives would say there has to be a trade-off, there has to be savings made. Trump will argue that DOGE might help do that, but I think it's very untested thesis so far.
I want to listen to one more clip from last night, and that's regarding Trump's plans to expand U.S. territory.
To further enhance our national security, my administration will be reclaiming the Panama Canal. We need Greenland for national security and even international security, and we're working with everybody involved to try and get it. And I think we're going to get it. One way or the other, we're going to get it.
Both the Greenland Prime Minister and Panamanian President say this isn't going to happen. How far do you think Trump is going to be willing to push this?
I think he is willing to push it quite far because he believes it is important to show American assertiveness or American dominance. But if, as is the case, those lawmakers, those leaders are saying, no, we're not having that, I don't really know where you go from there. You can ratchet the pressure up, but there is always this question with Trump. Is he saying these things to excite his supporters, to provide slogans of a kind, or is he really going to follow through? Interestingly, he seems to have put quite a lot of the burden for Panama onto Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, who hasn't been quite so full-throatedly endorsed as some other members of the Trump cabinet.
Let's talk about the Democrats. There was this controversial moment when Representative Al Green interrupted the speech. He was waving his cane at the president. He was later escorted out by the sergeant at arms. Doesn't seem like that is the face that the Democratic Party likely wanted to have the world see last night.
No, I think that is fair, and it was notable that President Trump seized upon this, talking about the fact that there's nothing he can do to make Democrats happy. I don't think that Democrats have a unified strategy yet as to how to deal with Trump. They're still reeling from his victory last November. You could go in a lot of different ways in opposing him. That did maybe appeal to the Liberal base, but probably not too many voters beyond that.
Democrats probably want you to focus more on Alyssa Slotkin, the moderate senator from Michigan, won in a state that Trump also won. What did you make of her counter to Trump's speech last night, and do you think that she has the right mix of politics that would be valuable to Democrats moving forward?
If the objective is to appeal to the centre ground, yes, I think Senator Slotkin was better, because she put the focus much more squarely on kitchen table issues, on the idea that people like Elon Musk could take things that really matter to millions of Americans away from them. It was a much more heartland, floating voter focused message.
I want to come back to Ukraine because we did get some more news on that today. CIA Director John Ratcliffe says the U.S. has paused intelligence sharing with Ukraine. Add that to the previous announcement that the U.S. was going to pause weapons shipments. The CIA director seemed to walk that back a little bit, saying after that letter from Zelensky last night that they could restart the intelligence sharing again. But what are you going to be watching for over the next few days and weeks as it pertains to U.S. involvement in efforts to try to bring the war to an end?
So firstly, on the intelligence gathering, that is a really crucial point, because it is one of the things that Western European nations do not really have the capacity to replicate. If the United States withdraws that, it's kind of done as far as Ukraine is concerned. I think that is part of the bigger picture, Drew, which is looking at whether the US is essentially choking off aid for Ukraine, forcing them into a peace deal, or whether that could be tempered to some degree.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Niall Stanage, thanks so much.
Thanks, Drew.
Happening today, the suspected mastermind behind the 2021 suicide bombing outside Abbey Gate at Afghanistan's Kabul airport is set to make his first appearance in a federal court on Wednesday. Mohammed Sharifullah is set to face charges in that bombing that killed 13 U.S. service members. President Trump announced the arrest Tuesday night during his address to a joint session of Congress. News Nation's Libby Dean has what we know about the suspect.
Drew, the terrorist allegedly involved in that 2021 bombing on Abbey Gate in Afghanistan is set for his first court appearance today in Virginia. This is going to be at 2 p.m. this afternoon, and it comes after that overnight extradition here to the U.S. Now, we saw top intelligence officials at Dulles Airport to oversee this arrival just moments after President Trump wrapped up his address last night, where he highlighted the extradition of the terrorist. Now, you can see in those images there the directors of the FBI, the CIA, as well as Attorney General Pam Bondi there. Trump's national security advisor Mike Waltz at the White House this morning complimenting the work of the CIA, FBI, and DOJ. Let's listen.
In a month, through our intel sharing relationship, the great work of Director Radcliffe, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, he landed overnight. The president was emotional, but he was thrilled to be able to call those families and say this monster is going to be brought to justice.
Now here's what we know about the suspect. Mohammed Sharifullah, aka Jafar, joined ISIS-K in 2016. Around 3 years later, he was arrested, then later escaped from prison. The Justice Department says during an FBI interview, Jafar admitted to scouting the route for the Abbey Gate bomber, as well as sharing weapons instructions for a terrorist attack in Moscow in 2024. Now, this is a preliminary hearing in Virginia today, and we know that President Trump last night in his address to that joint session of Congress said that he was promising swift action when it comes to this terrorist who was allegedly involved in that bombing that left 13 U.S. military service members dead. Drew?
Representative Sylvester Turner, the Democrat from Texas and former Houston mayor, died at the age of 70 Tuesday night. Turner won his seat in Congress in November, taking over for the late Representative Sheila Jackson Lee. Turner was taken to the hospital late Tuesday night after attending President Trump's address to a joint session of Congress. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries paid tribute to Turner on Wednesday, calling him an iconic leader and fighter until the end. That's today's Daily Debrief. I'm Drew Petrimoulx. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Hill's YouTube channel, and come back here soon for the intersection between politics and policy.